I'm going to begin today with a quote from the philosopher Wittgenstein. Philosophy is a battle against the bewitchment of our intelligence by means of language. So this is an interesting definition of philosophy. It's a battle against the bewitchment of our intelligence by means of language. And it seems to me it's a battle that philosophy has more often than not lost. It's a battle too, which is at the heart of Zen Buddhism. It's a battle which Buddhism has often lost too. And the last 10 verses or so, which I covered in the previous video, have been an onslaught against language. There's nothing wrong with language as such, but when we take it as reality, then we're in trouble. The battle is lost. There's more to Zen than this, but it's certainly an aspect of Zen. This battle against the bewitchment, or what I often refer to as the enchantment of the intelligence by language. One of the problems is we're so seduced, we're so bewitched, we're so enchanted by the language that reality constructs that we're not inclined to challenge it. We actually feel it's absurd to challenge it. We feel it's hair-splitting. What's the point? Well, the point is to move from limitation to freedom. The verses that we're looking at, the verse summary of the Lankavatara Sutra, known as the Sagatakam, begins by saying, listen to the wonderful Mahayana doctrine declared in this Lankavatara Sutra, composed into verse gems and destroying a net of the philosophical views. We all subscribe to a net of philosophical views, and we're caught up in that net. And we're so used to the situation, most of the time we don't even realize we're caught up in this net. This net operates at a very fundamental level, a very deep and subtle level. You might think, well, I don't subscribe to philosophical views, I'm not a philosopher. But to the extent that you believe that you're an individual, to the extent that you believe there's a world out there that you're somehow engaging with, well, this is a net of philosophical views. And these philosophical views are part of the bewitchment of our intelligence by means of language, as Wittgenstein said. They're described in the next verse as error. It is error that causes the world to be externally perceived as it is manifested to people. Mind is not born of the visible world, therefore mind is not visible. So let's be quite clear here. We are not entertaining another philosophical view. We're wanting to come back to our own authentic realization. our own realization of things as they actually are, rather than how they've been imparted to us, rather than how they've been inculcated into us. So the clue here is to come back to awareness, what is described here as mind. There's clearly stuff going on. When we start thinking about it, well, that's when we start constructing our net of philosophical views. But is it possible to be aware of everything that's going on and not to think about it, and to be still in the primordial realization that there's one other factor here? In fact, there's only one factor. There's only one factor without which none of this would be apparent. And that's the factor of awareness. It's the factor of awareness. It's the only factor. Without this factor, none of this would be going on. You might argue that it's going on, but then you're getting caught up in mind with a small m. No, we're not interested in these arguments. We're not interested in getting bewitched by notions and concepts. No. Let's come back to this awareness that is aware that stuff is going on. It's an amazing thing, a wonderful thing. It's quite nice to realize it. Very nice. And as nice as it is, for some reason we want to keep leaving it behind. Because there's all this stuff going on. We're kids in a candy shop. Wow. But it's actually very nice outside the candy shop, when we haven't forgotten ourselves for all that candy. We haven't replaced our sense of being for the promise of the candy. So this awareness has got nothing to do with what's going on. It says here that mind is not born of the visible world. Well, that's the case, obviously. Therefore, mind is not visible. It's very subtle. It's not obvious. Conventional thinking these days, in modern so-called scientific circles, is that awareness is a function of the visible mind. But that's a philosophical view. That's part of the net which entraps and limits our sense of being. We can realize for ourselves if we come back to this awareness that everything stems from this. So to believe that all of this that's going on is indicative of some external world, well, it's a philosophical view, and it's a spiritual error. So I'm not asking you to believe this. I'm not trying to prove anything to you. I'm just asking you to acknowledge your very own awareness, the awareness that is hearing this, the awareness which gives light to the whole of what is going on. This is true philosophy. This is Zen.